I'm going to make a very simple FPS game in Blender, the idea being that it's very simple, but it shows you some of the techniques that are used to make FPS games. Then you should be able to use those techniques to create your own, much more imaginative and much more fun version. But hopefully this is a quick and straightforward way to show you the basics. So I'm going to start by making some parts. I'm going to make a room which the player can walk around. I'm going to make a door which is going to be the exit from this room and the way you complete the game. And I'm going to make a key so that you can, so there's something that you have to do before you just leave the room. And I'm going to make a player with a camera attached that we can control and use as our way of interacting with the environment. First I'm going to make the room, and it's going to be very, very simple. As I've said, you can make yours a lot more complicated or exactly the same, entirely up to you. To make the room, I'm going to extrude and shape this, this default cube. The way I'm going to do that is to go into edit mode. So clicking on this little button here will bring up a list. I can choose edit mode. Then I can choose different parts of this mesh, either vertices by right clicking on the corners or where edges meet, edges like so, and faces like this. In this case I'm going to take just this face here. I'm going to come over to the left hand side where there's a number of tools that I can use to shape my mesh. One of them is extrude. I'm going to choose extrude region, and as I move the mouse you can see that pushes that face out and creates a larger object with more faces. I'm going to extrude this side here, extrude region, and like so. And you don't have to keep pressing extrude region over here. You can press E and that will also allow you to extrude it in a particular direction. You can press the either X, Y or Z if you want it to go in a particular direction. I'm not doing that at the moment, it's just doing it naturally based on the direction of the face that I'm extruding. Now that I've done that, I'm going to cut a doorway, and the doorway is going to be here. To do that I'm going to use a different tool called loop cut and slide. When I click that, it gives me if I hover over the shape, it gives me a purple preview line, and when I click, that turns orange and I can slide that along. I'll do that again, loop cut and slide, and you can see the preview line will change depending on which edge I'm hovering over. So I want to get that one there again. I'm just going to click where it is because that roughly looks alright. You can be very precise if you like. I'm not going to be precise at all because I want it to be quite quick. Doors normally stop before the ceiling, so I'm going to do another loop cut and slide. This time you can see I want the preview line to go right around the object, and then click and just lift that up a little bit so that I've got this face here, which I can select by right clicking it, pressing X and deleting the face. Yeah, there we are. So now we can see inside that object. It's left a hole for the door, so I'm going to need to make a door. To do that, I'm going to click, left click here, just in the doorway, and that is going to place the 3D cursor there so that when I press add mesh cube, I can just then scale that, and it's roughly in the right place when I start. So I'm going to get about the right sort of width first, then I'm going to press S and X, then X, just to squash it down. Yours might be in a different orientation to mine, so you might have to scale it slightly differently, but the general idea is the same. Then finally I'm going to press S, then Z to make it taller. Lift it up like this, and hopefully it'll roughly fit the doorway that I've made, which it's not too bad. At the moment though, you can see that the door, if I press R and then Z, you can see it rotates around its center, which gives me a revolving door. I don't want that. I want a door that opens like a door might in your house. You could of course have a sliding door, in which case you wouldn't need to move this pivot point, but to get the sort of swing that we get on a normal door, I'm going to need to move this pivot point, and the way to do that is to make sure you've got your door selected, go into edit mode. You can also press tab to go into edit mode. Then making sure that you've got all of the faces of the door highlighted. An easy way that I often use to do that is to press A, which will actually deselect any selected faces, and then press A again, and I know that now all of those faces are selected. Then I'm just going to move it all along in the y-axis, and again, not being very precise, I'm just doing it by eye. I'm going to zoom in a little. I'm trying to align this orange dot here with the edge of the door, so you can see the orange dot there that I'm leaving behind, and hopefully that's not too far off to give me a realistic swing. So when I come back out into object mode and I press R and Z, you can see that that now swings a lot more like a real door. Of course, I need to just pop it back into place over here. So there's the room and the door. There is one other thing I have to do to the room, which might not be immediately obvious, and that is turn it inside out. The reason for this is that textures only really work on the surface of an object, and at the moment the surface of our room is currently facing us. It's on the outside. We need to turn it inside out so that the textures appear correctly on the inside. We don't need to worry about the outside because the game will end as soon as we exit the door. We'll never see the outside of the building. I select the object, press tab, again just press A until I'm happy that all of the faces are selected. Then over here on the left hand side I find the shading and UV tab, and I press this button that says flip direction, and you can see it's slightly changed the shading on it, which shows us now that it's kind of done something. If I just zoom out again, I'll go back into object mode. The contrast has changed a bit on the surface of this object, and that shows us as well as it can that it's now turned inside out. It might not always be immediately obvious, but you'll soon find out when your textures don't show up in your game. So now we've got the ability to texture the inside of this room. We've got our door, which swings correctly. Next thing I'm going to make is a key. I'm going to keep it very simple and make one that looks a bit like an old-fashioned door key, just using similar techniques to how I made the room. Again, just keeping it very simple. You can make yours more detailed and good looking. So to do this, I'm going to add a mesh. I'm going to add a cube. Obviously that's going to be a bit too big to fit into my room, so I'm going to scale it down for a start. You could of course use different views. View, you've got sort of a top view or whatever to get a different angle on your objects that might help you to model it more effectively. I'm just going to change the view so I'm quite comfortable with it. I sort of can see what I'm doing. I'm going to go into edit mode, so press tab. I'm going to make sure I've got my faces selected here. I'm going to start by extruding this out a little bit. So I pressed E. I'm going to just continue doing that. There we are. I can select more faces if I hold Shift down whilst I right click on them. So I've got this one selected already. I'm holding Shift and then right clicking on this other one here. I can now press E to extrude them both. I'm going to do that once more. And I'd like this to be a complete circle, as it were, or kind of squared circle. So I'm going to have to delete some faces and build new faces in their place. So as you can see, I've got this one selected. I'm going to press X and press faces. That's left a hole here. I'm going to do the same to the other side. So I'll press X, faces. I'm left with these opposing edges, which so I can select an edge like that. I can hold Shift, select the opposite edge, and press F. If I undo that, if I just select some edges that are not opposite, so like that, and press F, you'll see that that's gone a bit skew width and it's clearly not what I'm after. If you're doing the whole loop, I can select all of those by pressing Alt as I right click on one of the edges in that loop. Now I can hold Shift and Alt, doing a bit of keyboard acrobatics, and right click on this set of edges as well. If I then press Control and E and choose Bridge Edge Loops, it'll do the whole lot at once. So there's a couple of methods there. As you can see, it's left me with this loop of faces. I'm going to select this one here now, and it's going to come out and be this long part of the key. So I'll press E like this, and because I want a couple of teeth on the key, I'm going to press E and just extrude it a few more times. The reason I'm doing it a few times rather than just once and for a longer time is that I want these individual faces here because I want to be able to extrude them. Like that. If I wanted to add a little more detail, I could perhaps press E at the end like that, and then scale that just to finish it off. But yeah, there we are. I think I might just make those a little bit bigger. So I'm going to select both of those and just pull them towards me on the x-axis. There we are. So I pressed X so that it didn't go in a different direction to that which I wanted. I can add a modifier to this to give it a bit more of a natural look. I could use this spanner here to choose a modifier called Subdivision Surface. This actually will add more faces to it. You can see that it's rounded it off somewhat. If I was to go into edit mode, you might find that I can continue to make this key a little bit better looking. You can see I've got the original cage as well as being able to see the smoothed version. So I'm just going to grab these edges. You can see at each corner of the bit that should be most round. I'm moving around the object to get a better look. Now if I press S, you can see that I'm able to round off those edges and make it a little bit more pleasant looking. Here I can make these teeth sharper by adding more edges. To do that, I can use Loop Cut and Slide again in the tools, just like I did to cut the door out. The same tool, but for a different purpose. So Loop Cut and Slide, get my preview line over here and click, and you can see that just sort of sharpens it up there. I'm going to do a couple more. Control and R is the shortcut for Loop Cut and Slide. There we are. A very simple thing that looks a bit like a key. I'm going to add one more there and one more there. I think that'll do. The overall thing I'm going to scale down a little bit more so that it's a bit more appropriate for the environment. And that's the main object of the game created.